In a world of uncertain surfaces, uncertainty, questionable prep work, and painters who can't tell the difference, one trim paint reigns supreme.
Of my labor, what I have I built with my own hand.
Yo, what's cracking, folks? Jeremy Vassar here with Practical Painting. We are professional painters here to help you with your various painting endeavors. I know that's a long tagline, but we're working on it. In this video, I'll be talking about my new favorite trim paint, so let's get to it. A few months ago, I put out a video called Best Sherwin-Williams Trim Paint, where I went over Duration Semi-Gloss, which at the time was our go-to trim paint. Once I released that video, we got quite a few comments from painters expressing some concern over using an acrylic latex-based trim paint on doors and trim and things like that. That opinion was expressed with varying degrees of grace, but because I am married to my wife and not my ideas or the trim paint that I use, I did a little bit of research just to make sure I was minding all of my P's and Q's. I talked to my sales rep, I talked to several store managers, and I found out that, at least in my area, the top selling semi-gloss paints from Sherwin-Williams were Duration Semi-Gloss and the regular Emerald Semi-Gloss. So a lot of people use that paint, a lot of professional painters use that paint, and there's nothing technically wrong with using either of those products on your trim and doors and things like that. So I do still stand by that video. However, I will concede that you may run into some durability issues, particularly on high-touch surfaces like around door handles and things like that, but I will come back to that in a little while. I want to take a step back now and talk a little bit about trim paint in general. Back in the day, it was standard to use a full blast oil-based trim paint. Now, this was used for a variety of reasons. A lot of guys really liked oil-based trim paint. It has a lot of great features. One, the open time is really, really long, so the paint stays wet for a long time. What this allows it to do is level out, and it tends to mitigate a lot of the brush strokes, and it looks very smooth once it dries. So that's reason number one. Number two is that because of the oil resins in the paint, it hardens super, super hard. So in general, oil-based trim paint was extremely durable, so it holds up for a really long time. As oil-based paints were being faded out, the water-based formulations started to take over, and it was kind of a mixed bag, because you have the upside of water-based paints is that they're easier to clean up, so you can just use water and soap to clean out your brushes. If you have any spills, it's not that big of a deal. Also, they're just in general much easier to work with. Because the dry times are quite a bit shorter than the oil, they tend to be, you can get multiple coats done in a day, and they off-gas rather quickly, so it's not going to stink for like weeks and weeks after you paint a room. So that's all nice, but some of the drawbacks to some of particularly the early water-based formulas were durability issues. They didn't harden that hard, and some of them still don't, so you can run into, again, like I said before, durability issues around high-touch areas. Also, adhesion. That's one of the issues that you run into, where if you're going over a slick surface that's very glossy or is previously painted with an oil-based trim paint, and you go over with a latex-based product or any water-based product, you're probably going to have an issue with it not sticking properly, and you might need to use an adhesion primer or even an oil-based primer. In order to mitigate some of the downsides of a water-based formula while taking advantage of some of the upsides of an oil-based paint, paint manufacturers released hybrid products like this one. This is Emerald Urethane Trim Enamel from Sherwin-Williams. It released about a year and a half ago, give or take a couple months, and we've been using it off and on since it came out. And it's quickly becoming my new favorite trim paint for a variety of reasons. Basically, they took a water-based formula and pumped some oil resins into it, and also some magic and wizardry. There are four main reasons that this is quickly becoming my new favorite trim paint. Number one is its open time / dry time. If you look on the can, it says it'll take 2 hours to touch, which means if you coated a surface in 2 hours. If you touch it, it's not going to come off on your finger, and 4 hours to recoat. So you can do a second coat after 4 hours. I find that to be an overestimation. Obviously, it depends on the conditions of the room. They base those times on 50% humidity and I think 77 degrees. So if you're in a warmer room or a room with more or less humidity, those times may vary. But if you're using fans and kind of moving the air around, we can very easily do 2 coats in a day. And as long as you give it, like I find, particularly if you're pushing along with fans, we can get it to dry out in like an hour and a half to 2 hours and we're already recoating, which is super nice. The second big thing I like about this product is its finish. When I say finish, I mean what it looks like once it's dry. This particular product comes in satin, semi-gloss, and gloss. Those are the 3 sheens it's available in. We generally use the semi-gloss. It looks really nice. It's not quite as shiny as some of the other semi-gloss paints I've used before in the past. But it looks really nice. I don't know how else to say it. You just got to use it for yourself and see what you think. But I really like the level of sheen in this, particularly the semi-gloss. That's the one I've used the most. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it dries, and my clients like it as well. Number 3 is the main reason we've switched over to this as our main trim paint, and that is its versatility. This is a little inside baseball about professional painting, but here we go. When I go out to do estimates, it's really important that I can accurately predict how long it's going to take us to do a job. And in every job, you're going to run into different factors that might throw a curveball at you or whatever. But one of the things that we run into is if you think a surface is a certain type of surface or has a certain product on it, and then it turns out not to be, you might end up having to do an extra step, which just adds time and money to the job, where the client may or may not be cool with paying extra for something you probably should have seen coming. One of the things that happens a lot is if you thought that the trim you're going over is latex-based or water-based and it's actually oil, then a lot of times you can't go straight over that with a water-based product. You've got to do an adhesion primer or an oil primer or something like that. What's sweet about this product is you can go over almost anything, regardless of what it's been painted with before, without even thinking about it. This grips to almost anything because of the oil resins and the urethane in it. It just is extremely versatile. It will grip onto almost anything. Also, if you're going over stained trim, even if it's polyurethane, as long as you scuff sand it and get it nice and clean. In general, with trim, but when you're prepping it, you want it to be clean, dry, and dull. But this will grip onto that, and we just did it a couple weeks ago on a job where there was a stained trim. It hadn't been polyed, but we went straight over that with this, and we ended up only having to do like 3 coats, which wasn't a big deal, and it still saved me that step of having to use an oil primer, which is really nice. The fourth thing that I really like about this paint is its durability. Because of the oil resins in it, when it dries, it hardens way harder than a lot of other products, so that is a really nice feature. I have a feeling that the doors and the trim that we've painted with this product are going to hold up to multiple cleanings, and then just high touch zones a lot better than some of the other products we have used in the past. Now, I haven't been back to these homes that we've use this product in because we just did these jobs and we just started using this product. But my gut feeling is that it's going to hold up much better over time than some of the softer trim paints that you may run into. That being said, there are a few things that I am less fond of. One is the odor. I will say it's not bothering me as much as it did when I originally started using it. I think I mentioned this before, but you may feel like you want to use a respirator. I don't particularly feel the need to do that, but that's just because I've used it more, and we tend to keep the air moving in our job sites, which is also really helpful. I find that to be almost more useful than using a respirator. The second thing I'm less fond of is how runny the paint is. It's not terrible. I've definitely it's nothing like Advance from Benjamin Moore, which runs all over the place. This tends to drip and run in a predictable fashion. So if you're painting a 6-panel door, a lot of times it'll pool up in the corner of one of the panels or on top of a windowsill, things like that. But because the open time's pretty decent, you can go back and touch those up, and it's not that big of a deal. My biggest gripe with this product is cleaning up my brushes after I've used it. I usually use a Corona Cortez. This is a 2-inch. I'm using these brushes forever. They're awesome. They're my favorite. This is a 2-inch. I usually use either a 2 or a 2.5. But on the can it says soap and water cleanup, and when you go to clean out your brushes, you have to be extremely thorough to make sure you get every bit of that out of the brush, or else it will harden up quite aggressively. Like this guy here, you can kind of, if you can hear that, it's very hard. So if you don't clean them out extremely well, the bristles are hard, and then it's very difficult to get them to soften back up and hold a clean line, which bothers me. And I have heard and then read that with certain modified paints, a lot of the hybrids, you may want to do a rinse with mineral spirits in addition to soap and water. So I'm going to start doing that and see how that works out. If you've tried that, let me know. But I think that'll do it. I actually just read it on the cover to the brush here. So anyway, that's just something to be aware of. It's not as easy as like a purely latex-based paint or water-based paint. They clean up pretty easily, and the brushes tend to just reform rather easily as long as you put them back in their cover. But anyway, just something to be aware of, and I'll get the hang of it. I'm sure I'll figure it out. But the last thing, it's not it's less of a big deal to me, but some people may have gripes with the price of this particular product. It retails for right around $95. Which is fairly steep for 1 gallon of paint, but I will say Sherwin-Williams is always running sales, so a lot of times you can get stuff 20 to 40% off. Also, if you're a contractor and you have an account with Sherwin-Williams, depending on how much paint you buy, it'll probably not cost you as much. So that's something to be aware of. But one other thing that I always consider when pricing out products and seeing what we want to use is how much of this am I actually going to buy? And in general, when you paint trim in a house, even a large house, you might only go through like 2 gallons total of trim paint. That'll paint a lot of doors, a lot of trim, a lot of crown molding. And the total cost of the job, an expensive gallon of trim paint might not kind of like make or break your cost, particularly for what you're getting with this product. But I know some people might be a little more price sensitive, and that's totally fine. There are other products available that will serve you well. Despite all of that, this is still my new favorite trim paint. It is what we're using on all of our jobs now for interior trim. We're still messing around with different products outside, but this is our go-to interior trim. So we're using it on baseboards, crown molding, chair rail molding, windows, window casings, doors, everything. So this is what we are using the majority of the time. It adheres to almost anything, and I like its versatility. I like that, if the surface isn't prepped perfectly, it'll still grip to almost anything. And again, I really like the finish and the durability of this product once it is dried, and it looks super snazzy. So there you go, folks. That's my current pick for trim paint. Let me know what you guys are using on your trim. Unless it's Pro Classic, in which case you need to rethink your life choices. But seriously, I'm interested to know what you guys are using. Doesn't have to be from Sherwin-Williams, could be from Benjamin Moore, Lowe's, Home Depot, or Faro and Ball if you are into that sort of thing. If you found this video useful in any way, shape, or form, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. That helps us out quite a bit. And until next time, y'all take it easy, work smart, and have a good one. Peace.
Amazing.